And now, just a day before a deadline, we've learned the 7 Colorado River Basin states have not reached an agreement on how to conserve more of the river's waters.
Right now, in a windowless conference room in Phoenix, 7 states are staring at a clock they cannot stop. The most important water agreement in the modern American West is about to expire, and no one in that room knows how to save it. For 100 years, the Colorado River has powered cities, fed farms, and turned desert into empire. It built Las Vegas. It made Phoenix explode into one of the fastest-growing metro areas in the country. It irrigated California's Imperial Valley, transforming sand into one of the most productive agricultural regions on Earth. But here's the question no one wanted to ask. What if the river was never big enough to support any of it? In 1922, representatives from 7 western states gathered near Santa Fe to divide the waters of the Colorado River. They believed the river produced around 16.5 to 17 million acre-feet of water per year. So they split it. 7.5 million to the upper basin, 7.5 million to the lower basin, and later 1.5 million to Mexico. On paper, it worked. In reality, it was a mathematical illusion. The stream flow records they relied on from 1905 to 1922 came from one of the wettest periods in over 500 years. Tree ring data later revealed the long-term average flow of the river is closer to 13 to 14 million acre-feet. That means from the very beginning, more water was promised than the river could reliably deliver. An empire was built on a statistical anomaly. Then came the engineering miracles. Hoover Dam was completed in 1936, creating Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in the United States. In 1963, Glen Canyon Dam followed, forming Lake Powell. Together, they gave the illusion of control. For decades, the reservoirs filled, cities grew, agriculture spread across the desert, hydropower flowed. The system appeared unstoppable. In 1999, Lake Mead reached its highest level ever recorded. It would never be that full again. Around the year 2000, something shifted. It wasn't one catastrophic drought. It wasn't a single bad winter. It was something worse. Year after year, the river delivered less water than the system demanded. Scientists later confirmed that the period from 2000 to 2021 was likely the driest 22-year stretch in the Southwest in at least 1,200 years. Lake Mead dropped roughly 180 feet from its peak. Lake Powell fell more than 170 feet. The white bathtub ring etched into canyon walls became a scar visible from space, a monument to overconfidence. But falling water levels weren't just symbolic. They were mechanical. Hydropower depends on gravity. At full capacity, Hoover Dam can generate about 2,080 megawatts of electricity. But as Lake Mead falls, the pressure pushing water through its turbines weakens. By 2025, power generation had already been cut roughly in half compared to 2000 levels. If the lake drops low enough, turbines shut down entirely to prevent damage. Below a certain point, known as dead pool, water can no longer flow through the dam at all. No electricity, no downstream release, no legal agreement that can override physics. Because water law can divide paper, it cannot create gravity. The first fractures didn't appear at a dam. They appeared in a lettuce field in Southern California's Imperial Valley, home to some of the most senior water rights on the river. Farmers began facing mandatory cuts. Arizona lost hundreds of thousands of acre-feet under Tier 1 shortage declarations. Nevada took cuts. Mexico reduced its draw. Junior rights holders in Arizona were hit first. Entire growing seasons were abandoned, and when surface water disappears, farms turn to groundwater. But Arizona's aquifers were already collapsing. In parts of central Arizona, groundwater pumping has exceeded natural recharge for decades. Water tables have dropped hundreds of feet. The land above has begun to sink. More than 3,000 square miles have experienced subsidence. In some places, the ground has sunk nearly 20 feet, and where the land sinks unevenly, it cracks. Earth fissures stretch across the desert, swallowing roads, splitting canals, tearing at foundations. Farmers face an impossible choice: pump groundwater and destroy the land, or stop pumping and lose the crops. There is no third option. Las Vegas saw the threat early earlier than most. More than 90% of southern Nevada's water comes from Lake Mead. So the Southern Nevada Water Authority spent over $800 million building a third intake tunnel, drilled deep beneath the lake, far below the original intakes. It can draw water even if the lake drops near Dead Pool. Technically, Las Vegas can still access water, even if Hoover Dam can't produce power. But here's the hidden vulnerability. Las Vegas runs on perception. Casinos, hotels, conventions, they depend on public confidence. If tourists believe the city is running out of water, bookings drop before the taps ever do. Water fear becomes economic collapse long before physical shortage. Today, roughly 40 million people depend on the Colorado River Basin. It supports agriculture worth billions annually. It powers cities across Arizona, Nevada, and California. It sustains recreation economies from Lake Powell marinas to Grand Canyon rafting. And yet, since 2000, the river has averaged closer to 12.4 million acre-feet per year, far below the 16.5 million legally allocated. The 2007 operating guidelines that govern shortage rules expire at the end of 2026. So do the drought contingency plans. The 7 basin states have failed repeatedly to reach a consensus on how to divide future cuts. Upper basin states argue they already use less than their allocation. Lower basin states argue they host 75% of the basin's population and economy. Preemptive lawsuits are being prepared. Legal defense funds are growing. The 1922 compact, once considered untouchable, is quietly being positioned for courtroom battle. And the river does not care. The Colorado does not recognize state lines. It does not honor seniority dates. It does not negotiate. It follows snowpack. It follows temperature. It follows physics. Climate change has intensified evaporation, reduced snowpack, and shifted runoff timing. Warmer temperatures alone are estimated to have reduced Colorado River flows by roughly 20% over the past 2 decades. And warming is projected to continue. Scientists have modeled hundreds of scenarios. Many show Lake Powell flirting with minimum power pool again within years under continued dry conditions. Lake Mead, at 1/3 capacity, cannot absorb another prolonged drought without triggering deeper emergency cuts. The question is no longer whether pain will be distributed. The question is how fast. Because if cuts come too slowly, reservoirs cross physical thresholds, and once that happens, control shifts from policymakers to gravity. What happens if Glen Canyon Dam stops producing power? What happens if Hoover Dam's turbines go silent? What happens when agriculture contracts, property values soften under subsidence risk, hydropower revenue falls, and municipal budgets shrink, all at the same time? No modern economy has modeled that cascade. The Southwest contributes over $1 trillion in annual economic activity. It was engineered for abundance. It may now be forced to adapt to permanent scarcity. The delegates in that Phoenix conference room know the numbers. They know the snowpack is thin. They know Lake Mead sits near 1/3 capacity. They know Lake Powell hovers dangerously close to minimum power pool after dry winters. What they don't know is whether political institutions can move faster than hydrology. Can 7 states agree to reduce consumption to match a smaller river? Can 40 million people recalibrate expectations built during the wettest century in a millennium? Can agriculture shift? Can cities densify? Can lawns disappear? Can growth slow? Or will the legal framework collapse under the weight of promises the river can no longer fulfill? For a century, the American Southwest told itself a story that engineering could conquer climate, that dams could outsmart drought, that growth could continue indefinitely. The Colorado River was not just water. It was confidence. And confidence may be the first thing to evaporate, because when the era of abundance ends, every assumption gets renegotiated. The homes, the farms, the power grids, the economies, the very idea of endless expansion in the desert. Some compacts were never designed to survive a shrinking river. Some systems were built for conditions that no longer exist. And the most unsettling possibility of all is this: the crisis isn't coming. It has already begun. The reservoirs are low. The agreements are expiring. The lawsuits are forming. The snowpack is uncertain. And 40 million people are waiting on a river that may never again be what it once appeared to be. So the real question isn't whether the Colorado River can be saved. It's whether the civilization built around it can adapt fast enough to survive a smaller future. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because the story of water in the American West is still unfolding, and what happens next will shape the future of millions.